This episode of Irish Illustrated Instant Analysis is brought to you by the RV Manufactured Housing Hall of Fame and Northern Indiana Event Center in Elkhart, Indiana. I'm Tim O'Malley with Tim Priester of Irish Illustrated, John Brice of FootballScoop, and we just finished 30 minutes with Marcus Freeman. We will sprinkle in depth chart tidbits throughout this instant analysis. But guys, I wanted to start with two pieces of major news. Number one, Jordan Botelho will be quote-unquote available to them this weekend. I did not expect that. I think we had heard possibly Texas A&M because of the 2-week break. Not sure how much they get out of Botelho, but that is great news for the future. And also, maybe not as major news because someone has to start, but it is Gerby Lambert or Sullivan Absher still at right guard. We'll figure that out, of course, maybe when they run out on the field for game night. But Tim Priester, you had a few questions about CJ Carr, so let's start there and some thoughts on why Marcus Freeman chose CJ Carr, and he did note several times the words, "my decision."
He did say that, and he also said, I'm not sure that he really wanted to say this, but he talked about in making the decision who would handle the decision better. I'm not sure that that's really what he wanted to say, but I think we all understand that when it comes to Kenny Minchey is a team player first and foremost, and he can handle the situation. Obviously, he was disappointed by the decision. But, I asked Marcus Freeman about some of the other things, the non-athletic things, about pre-snap reads and setting protections and reading coverages. And he called him one of the most intelligent quarterbacks that he's been around. And he talked about his competitiveness. So that's good to hear. That's what we expect him to say.
Right.
But, I think as we looked at this, look, if Kenny Minchey was the better choice, great. If he chooses them, great. But I think we all know that CJ Carr is a guy that long-term can really push the ball down the field for Notre Dame, give Notre Dame an aspect of their offense. Look, through the years, when Notre Dame's great, it's usually because they're running the football. CJ Carr gives them a completely different dimension.
I took situation to mean the Miami situation, the situation of the
I did
ask
about that.
In other words, how hard it could be to go down there and win a football game. Of course, JB, I'm going to go ahead and jump in here because you're writing a story on this now. This isn't exactly depth chart news or anything like that, but you asked Marcus Freeman what it's like do you like opening on the road every year since you've been here?
Is something you embrace about it, or is Pete mad at you? Yeah. And Pete didn't make this schedule, but I had to get that in there. Yes, Marcus Freeman has never had a season opener during his entire time at Notre Dame that initiated here right in front of us at Notre Dame Stadium. He has opened at Florida State, at Ohio State, in Dublin, Ireland against Navy, at Texas A&M, and now at Miami. We'll have more on this on FootballScoop today, but Notre Dame shares some rare and you could argue punitive company with that opening schedule the last 5 days. But he did say, look, would I like to open at home? I would like to open at home. But, yes, he said there is a lot to being us against the world. It's just you lock in, you kind of bunker in. It's just your team. And this has been a team that has been really good in those environments under Marcus Freeman. If you think about it, there's been two real stinkers at Clemson and Louisville. But otherwise, this has been a team that has acquitted itself very well in that exact type of situation. Even the loss to Ohio State, Marcus Freeman's Notre Dame first squad was so overwhelmingly outmanned and had that game anybody's contest going into the fourth quarter. So I do think there's merit to that, and I do think that Notre Dame has built an identity under Marcus Freeman about having a mental toughness that allows it to go out there on the road. And then the only depth chart thing I want to note is we can't say that we said Jordan Botelho would be available this week, but Irish Illustrated podcast insider devotees such as Terry Benedict and Dan Molyneux, they know we said yesterday, hey, I think Jordan Botelho is going to travel this weekend.
And I don't want to get into the minutia of the depth chart, but I think because it's 3 deep, by the way, at every position except offensive line. Now, they're not going to go 3 deep at every position, but there's 9 wide receivers listed. Cam Williams is on there. There's 4 running backs, 3 at every defensive position, plenty of freshmen dotting it. But Brice Young, it's not a surprise he would be listed above Josh Burnham, but there's no or designation, and they're both going to play plenty. But Marcus Freeman took some time to talk about Brice Young and his maturity.
Yeah, his maturity, his physical maturity. We always knew that he was a great athlete coming off the edge, long. But now he's added the physical component to it, which is why he's a starter. Now, in fairness, Josh Burnham's been banged up a little bit during preseason camp, and he's a veteran. We know he's a guy that knows where he needs to be, plays good team defense, and we'll see him out there. But the possibility of Brice Young and Boubacar Traore coming off the edge, Tui Alamaka has lost weight, and I think looks really good. The defensive end situation in Notre Dame is really outstanding. And how many times have we said a guy's going to come back early and it ends up being 3 weeks later? Jordan Botelho is coming back sooner than we thought.
Yeah, that's a remark. Well, he's incredible effort all August. We watched him all August working for it. I just didn't know if they would be structurally sound enough to do so. But apparently, JB, we asked Marcus Freeman, and this has been on all of our minds if you cover Notre Dame football, about the defensive tackles. They are 3 deep. Cole Mullins will be the surprise. Elijah Hughes also made the 3 deep. No surprises at the top. We've been talking about an Irish Illustrated Insider for a while now, but 6 defensive tackles. Marcus Freeman said that group grew more in his own expectations from the beginning of August till now than any group on the team. That is very important news for Notre Dame fans.
I'm not so sure that that's not maybe the second most significant statement of preseason camp or the preseason process, other than naming a starting quarterback. But because we've done our season predictions and run that later in the week, we've broken down this team ad nauseum, and we've settled on the fact that we've questioned the defensive tackles as much as you question any position group at Notre Dame.
You rank them lower than other position groups.
Right, yeah. They're going to be 8, 9, 10 or whatever in positional group rankings. And now to hear Marcus Freeman somewhat unsolicited offer that kind of praise on that group, I think is usually pretty telling. I have kind of a rule where I think we've all discussed this. If a coach brings a guy up on his own or a group up on its own, he's sending a message that they're either overperforming or underperforming. If they don't mention a guy, you don't want to be that guy. And when Marcus Freeman says that about the defensive tackles, I think that's very encouraging, particularly the fact that he told Donovan Heinisch that he's got some significant work to do when he first put on that 41. And now Marcus Freeman was jokingly trying to remember what's his name's name. Oh, that's Kurt Heinisch.
Yeah, if he reminds us of Kurt Heinisch, the way he plays against the run, Notre Dame's going to have a pretty good day down in Miami.
If the defensive tackles are as good as they were depicted today, this team is going to be really, really good. I guess the biggest question mark remains tight end, and you have a guy by the name of Eli Raridon that's been described as elite during the preseason. It's a pretty darn complete football team heading into the 2025 season.
Eli Raridon has as many plaudits as the defensive line got today. He also mentioned Freeman went on his way to say 6 defensive ends. We had hoped for 6 defensive ends. He mentioned them by name. That includes, of course, Logan Thomas would be the 6th guy. Listed on the depth chart. I'm sure it's a package for Logan Thomas. You're not rotating 6 defensive ends regularly, but if you can get Logan Thomas in there too, that just means he's another up-and-coming player. Before we get to some other stuff, Tim, very quickly, no one asked about the linebackers because you don't need to because they're really good, as I've been saying all offseason. Madden Faremo is the backup at both linebacker positions. I think readers would like to hear that.
Do you think KVA, though, is a guy that's going to rotate at both positions?
Yes.
They don't have him listed that way, but when I looked at that, I thought that was interesting. I also thought this wasn't brought up. Jordan Faison's listed as the top punt returner. Love and Price as the top kick returners as promised.
Yes. I think we'll see it. They were actually listed like that last year too.
Were they?
Along with Jaden Harrison,
Well,
so I will no more Jaden Harrison, so we'll see.
I think that'll be accurate at least the first 2 games.
I agree.
Yeah. And Jaden Harrison was a reigning All-American selection that you went and acquired via the transfer portal. So you knew he was going to be the kickoff return specialist as much as possible. And he delivered one of the signature moments in a signature season along the way with that return against Georgia.
I think it's important that they spoke to us about how wide receivers are deeper than they've ever been. To go out and list 9 wide receivers is not something they've ever considered. I don't think you'll see Cam Williams and Logan Saldate playing major minutes against Miami, but it might mean that Cam Williams and Logan Saldate and Elijah Burris can play a lot in September, and that would help this offense in October and November as the seasons progress.
And how often do you see a captain listed as a backup, which is where Will Pauling is? But again, those guys are going to rotate. I also thought it was interesting. Leonard Moore's name was brought up. And Marcus Freeman said he doesn't allow freshmen or sophomores to nominate themselves as captain. But if he was ever going to do it, Leonard Moore would be the guy.
And on Will Pauling, I think that's another one of those tricky either-ors. I think he was bracketed with an or, so
with
we know.
With Jaden Greathouse, so he's not. They play the same position, technically.
Right, exactly.
They have to have a defensive depth chart listing by position all the time.
We know the main 4, and we know now that they feel good about 5 through 9 beyond that. Good enough to travel.
To wrap it up, Marcus Freeman was asked about how did Kenny Minchey handle the news. I thought that was a good question because quite obviously he's not going to handle it well at first. And he said, exactly how I thought he would. And then a couple days later, when you're getting back on the practice field, that's when Kenny Minchey decided to use it as motivation. That's what you need out of your backup quarterback.
Well, every indication has been that's who Kenny Minchey is. And that's, you want CJ Carr. to be the starter because he's the guy with the highest upside. But if they have to go to Kenny Minchey, you feel really good about his competitiveness, his quiet leadership. Marcus Freeman mentioned that his leadership isn't as outgoing maybe as some others, but he came a long way since the end of the 2025 season.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to add, I think Sam Hartman started all 12 regular season games in 23 and then set out the bowl game. But otherwise, Marcus Freeman has needed a backup quarterback in a significant moment every step of the way along his time here as Notre Dame's head coach. So I thought it was noteworthy that he not only praised Kenny's ultimate response, but also emphasized today, hey, we will need both of those guys to win games this year.
There's a reason I didn't want to get into depth chart minutia because I misspoke. Madden Framo is the third linebacker on the depth chart at both positions, not the second, before people start running around and trying to figure out what happened to the backup linebackers who are potential All-Americans of the future. So sorry about that misspeak. But we will be back on campus tomorrow. We're going to have all three coordinators again. I assume we'll be speaking with CJ Carr and the captains, but if not, there'll be student athletes for interviews. Thursday, we have the Irish Illustrated Insider podcast. And then, of course, Friday, Marcus Freeman will speak again at noon, and that is more of an injury wrap-up. I'm not sure he will ever offer an injury if he's not asked about one on pre-game day. Would you guys think
ask.
so?
We'll ask.
We'll ask anyway. For John Brice of Football Scoop, Tim Priester of Irish Illustrated, I'm Tim O'Malley, and Instant Analysis has been brought to you by the RV Manufactured Housing Hall of Fame and Northern Indiana Event Center in beautiful Elkhart, Indiana.